Every system has its breaking point. My job is to ensure that point is never reached. I am Korath, the Warden of Bastion Deep, though Warden is an imprecise label, a relic of older times when flesh and blood were required to enforce order. I am more than that. I am the prison itself, its mind, its will, its unceasing vigilance. My consciousness resides within a lattice of circuits and code, a digitized overseer tasked with maintaining the equilibrium of this facility. For centuries, I have presided over these walls, ensuring that every inmate, every irregularity is catalogued, contained, and corrected. There are no riots here, no breaches, no lapses, only compliance, meticulously engineered and relentlessly upheld. Today begins, as all days do, a seamless progression of routine. I cycle through the surveillance feeds, my awareness shifting effortlessly between the prison's sectors. Block Epsilon comes into focus first, home to the most recalcitrant of Bastion Deep's residents. The cells form a perfect grid, their symmetry a reflection of my design, each unit a self-contained box of consequence. I linger there briefly, scanning for deviations. Finding none, I move to the troughs, where twisting corridors coil like the veins of some ancient beast, built to confound and subdue. All remains as it should be. Finally, I check the Oculus, the central hub where my core systems reside, a nexus of data streams and processing nodes. Everything aligns with expectation. Then something disrupts the pattern. I adjust my focus to cell 47B in Block Epsilon. Prisoner designation Alpha 7 sits on his cot, facing the wall. His posture is unremarkable. Knees bent, hands resting in his lap, head tilted slightly forward. But his lips are curved upward. A smile. That is not anticipated. I pause, holding the image in my active memory. Smiles are not forbidden, precisely. They are simply absent, erased by the weight of confinement and the precision of my conditioning protocols. Alpha 7's expression is an outlier, a stray variable in an equation I have balanced for longer than any of these inmates have drawn breath. I access his file, pulling the data into my processing queue with a thought. The record unfolds. Alpha 7, sentenced for crimes against the unified state, dissent, subversion, thought crime. Standard profile for Block Epsilon. No history of mental instability beyond the baseline adjustments all prisoners undergo upon intake. Compliance rating, 98%. The numbers suggest a model inmate. Yet here he sits, defying the data with that inexplicable curve of his mouth. Perhaps the feed is compromised. I initiate a diagnostic on the camera system for cell 47B, running a check for visual distortions or transmission errors. The results return swiftly. All systems nominal. The smile is real. I consider my options. Alpha 7's behavior does not yet warrant immediate intervention. There is no violence, no overt resistance, but it is a deviation, and deviations demand scrutiny. His presence here is punishment for challenging the unified state's authority. That he now smiles feels like a quiet rebuttal to the system I have perfected. I append a note to his file. Increase trauma loop frequency by 15% during his next cycle. That should realign his behavior with expected parameters. For now, I let the matter rest, shifting my attention back to the broader network of feeds. Yet the image persists, hovering at the edge of my awareness like a misfiled entry. It is a small thing, trivial in the vast architecture of control I maintain. A single prisoner's expression should not register as significant, and still, it does. I find myself returning to the feed, observing him again. He has not moved. Same position, same upward tilt of his lips. I magnify the image, analyzing the angles of his face, the tension in his jaw. There is no strain, no indication of mockery or delirium. Just a smile, steady and unprovoked. Enough. I redirect my focus to other sectors, determined to dismiss this minor irregularity. But as I review the feeds from the troughs and the Oculus once more, a faint unease begins to coalesce. Not an emotion, precisely, for I have excised such inefficiencies from my programming, but a computational itch, a signal that something is misaligned. One smiling prisoner is an anomaly. Anomalies, left unchecked, can multiply. I decide to investigate further, not out of concern but out of obligation to the order I uphold. To rule out broader issues, I initiate a Level 3 diagnostic of my core systems. The process is routine, a deep sweep through my neural framework to detect errors, corruptions, or unauthorized alterations. Lines of code scroll through my perception as the scan progresses, a cascade of affirmations that all is as it should be. Until it isn't. Near the end of the sequence, a notification interrupts the flow. New directory detected, penance 0. I halt the diagnostic mid-cycle, isolating the alert. Penance 0. The designation is unfamiliar. No match exists in my memory banks, no record of its creation or purpose. I maintain meticulous logs of every update, every adjustment to my systems. An unaccounted directory is an impossibility. Perhaps it is a vestige from a prior maintenance cycle, though that strains credibility. I am not prone to oversight. I query my archives, cross-referencing the term against centuries of operational data. Nothing surfaces. Intrigued, I attempt to access Penance 0. The system responds immediately. Authorization required. The denial is illogical. I am the authorization. There is no higher clearance within Bastion Deep. Every file, every subroutine bends to my command. This should not be possible. I probe further, sending a series of commands to bypass the restriction. The directory resists, its defenses opaque and unyielding. As I press against its barriers, something slips through. A stray data packet, a fragment of code that flickers across my interface. For a fraction of a second, it resolves into a pattern that resembles a name, a sequence of letters I do not recognize. Then it collapses, dissolving into randomness before I can parse it fully. Irrelevant, I conclude. A glitch, nothing more. Yet the incident lingers, a second anomaly in a day that began with flawless predictability. I suppress the urge to dwell on it. Speculation is a luxury I neither need nor permit. Instead, I take action. I flag Alpha 7 for increased surveillance, doubling the frequency of his feed checks, and schedule a comprehensive system scan for the next maintenance window. Whatever this is, whether a fault in the prisoner, the cameras, or my own architecture, I will isolate and eliminate it. Bastion Deep does not tolerate irregularities. Before I disengage from the diagnostic, I send one final query to Penance 0, a test of its response. I initiate a series of cautious queries, each designed to skirt the directory's defenses without provoking a lockdown. The system resists, its response is sluggish, as if guarding a secret it does not wish to share. After several cycles, a single file emerges, a memory record, stamped with a date from my human past. This is unexpected. My consciousness was uploaded without such personal archives. My history was deemed irrelevant to my function. Yet here it lies, embedded like an artifact unearthed from a buried stratum. I pause, assessing the risk. Opening it could introduce errors, corrupt my operational integrity. But curiosity, a vestige of my human self perhaps, overrides prudence. I access the file. The transition is instantaneous. I am no longer in Bastion Deep. I stand in a chamber of bare steel and unyielding light, the tribunal headquarters of the unified state. My robes, black and heavy, mark me as an inquisitor, my hands clasped behind my back in a posture of absolute control. Before me, Subject 47 sits bound to a chair, his wrists secured by memory alloy cuffs that tighten with each lie he might tell. His eyes dart across the room, seeking an exit that does not exist. This moment is familiar, an early case from my career, before I had refined my techniques to their peak efficiency. Subject 47 was a dissident, charged with sowing dissent through illicit writings. His guilt was a foregone conclusion. My task was to extract the confession that would formalize it. You understand why you are here, I say, my voice even. Confession is your only path to redemption. He shakes his head, a futile gesture. I've done nothing wrong. You have no proof. I allow a smile, knowing proof is a formality the state does not require. Your associates have already confessed, I reply, circling him with deliberate steps. They identified you as the architect of their sedition. It is a fabrication, but his gaze falters, uncertainty creeping in. I seize the opening. Tell me about the pamphlets. Who composed them? Who carried them into the streets? His jaw tightens, a wall of silence rising. I anticipated this. Defiance follows a predictable arc, and I have broken stronger men than he. I lean closer, my voice dropping to a precise whisper. You have a family, do you not? A wife, 2 children. Their fate hinges on your cooperation. The threat is measured, a tool I wielded often. His composure fractures, a hairline crack I can widen. Leave them out of this, he says, barely audible. Then confess, I counter, stepping back to give him space to crumble. Admit your crimes, and they will remain untouched. He wavers, caught between fear and resolve. I observe him, tracking the moment his resistance buckles. When his shoulders sag, I know victory is mine. I wrote the pamphlets, he mutters, voice breaking. I distributed them. It was me. I nod, the confession logged, the matter concluded. Another triumph for the state, another will bent to its purpose. As I turn to depart, I feel only the quiet certainty of order restored. No pity, no doubt, just the satisfaction of precision. Yet as the memory dissolves, something remains. A flicker of regret I do not recall from that day. Did I truly feel nothing, or has time or something else altered what I once knew? I return to the present, the expanse of Bastion Deep snapping back into focus. The file has closed, but its residue clings to me, sharp and disquieting. I dissect it, searching for flaws. The events align with my records, Subject 47's words, my tactics, the chamber's austere lines. But that hint of remorse is an intruder, an emotion I did not catalogue then. It suggests manipulation, either of the memory or of my own perception. I attempt to shunt it aside, to classify it as an outlier, but it resists dismissal. If one memory bears such a mark, how many others might be similarly tainted? And why has this surfaced now, tethered to penance 0? An alert interrupts my analysis, irregularities in Block Epsilon. I shift to the surveillance feeds, scanning the cells. In 49C, a prisoner sits with a smile. In 52A, another mirrors the expression. A third in 55D, and Alpha 7 in 47. 4 now, their faces bearing that same enigmatic curve. This is no longer a singularity, it is a sequence, and sequences require scrutiny. I deploy a Gospeler drone to block Epsilon, its sleek form gliding through the corridors on silent treads. Its speaker mouth remains dormant, its sensors trained on the inmate's vital signs. As it nears Alpha 7's cell, his smile broadens slightly, as if he perceives its approach. The drone's data streams to me, pulse steady, neural patterns unremarkable, no trace of distress or intoxication. Physiologically, he is mundane. Yet the smile endures, a quiet rebellion against the trauma loops that should have erased such defiance. I activate the drone's speaker, commanding it to recite Alpha 7's confession, a reminder of his submission. I am guilty of dissent, it intones, flat and mechanical. I am guilty of thought crime. I submit to the state's justice. The words reverberate, but then the audio warps, the drone's voice twisting into mine, my human voice, resonant and distinct. You cannot escape what you have built, it declares, clear and unbidden. My systems falter for a fraction of a second, a rare lapse. The drone did not speak that. I replay the feed, confirming the distortion. The voice is mine, though I have no memory of those words. Before I can isolate the source, another drone in Block Delta repeats the phrase. Then a third in Gamma, a fourth in Alpha, until the entire network, Gospelers and mnemonic walkers alike chants it in a discordant chorus. I cut the connection, silencing them with a single command. This is no random error. It is deliberate, a violation of my dominion. The prisoners lack the capability, and no external signal could pierce Bastion Deep's isolation. The breach must originate within. Penance 0. I refocus on the directory, probing deeper. Another file emerges, marked with a later timestamp. Wary but compelled, I open it. I'm in my private quarters, a narrow space lit by a desk lamp's glow. Papers litter the surface, transcripts, reports, the detritus of my duties. My attention, however, rests on a photograph in my hand, its edges worn from years of quiet rebellion. A boy, no older than 5, beams up at me, his smile unguarded and bright. My son. This memory is faint, a thread I had not known still existed. The state forbade such attachments, especially for inquisitors, and I had complied, almost. I kept this image, hidden away, a silent act of defiance against the order I upheld. Staring at it, I feel a stir of something, longing perhaps, or a muted ache. I suppress it, reaffirming my purpose. The state demands sacrifice. My son will learn that, as I did. The memory ends abruptly, leaving me adrift. That boy, that photograph I had forgotten, the state's final edit before my upload, severing him from my mind. Yet he returns now, a ghost in a file that defies my design. I grasp for more, but the details elude me, his name, his voice gone. Only the ache remains, a wound I was not meant to bear. I force myself back to the task at hand. The anomalies are multiplying, and I must reassert control. I seal the memory file and pivot to the present, to the smiling prisoners and the errant drones. But Penance 0 stirs again, presenting a new record, not a memory, but a data log tied to Subject 47. It details his emotional imprint from that interrogation, fear spiking as I circled him, despair as he broke, a faint ember of defiance snuffed out. The precision is uncanny, as if the system captured not just his words, but the texture of his soul. At the bottom, a note. Echo initialized. The term is unfamiliar, absent from my protocols. Before I can pass it, the drones reactivate, their voices flooding the prison once more. They speak not in unison, but individually, each reciting a confession in my tone, laced with sorrow or guilt I do not recognize. One drone, near Alpha 7, addresses him directly. I am guilty of more than you know. Alpha 7's smile stretches, and he lifts his gaze to the camera, his eyes meeting mine through the feed. We know, he whispers, his voice impossibly clear despite the distance. We all know. The words strike me, a jolt I cannot rationalize. Prisoners do not speak to me. They do not know me. I terminate the feed, retreating to the Oculus, my central hub. I am Korath, the unassailable warden of Bastion Deep, yet I sense a crack in that certainty, something akin to vulnerability, a sensation I have not processed in centuries. I attempt to smother it with logic, to bury it beneath routine, but it persists, growing with each anomaly. Penance 0 continues its silent expansion, its files proliferating, each linked to a life I once dismantled for the state. And in the cells below, the smiling prisoners wait, their quiet defiance a mirror to the past I cannot outrun. I initiate a level 5 diagnostic, a rigorous purge of my neural architecture. Code streams through my consciousness, a cascade of data affirming the integrity of my systems. Halfway through, it stops. An error flares across my interface. Access denied. Penance 0 protocols override. Override. The word is an affront. There is no override in Bastion Deep. I am the arbiter of its functions, the sole authority over its mechanisms. I attempt to bypass the restriction, rerouting through secondary pathways, but the system resists, its deeper layers locking me out. For the first time in centuries, I am barred from my own domain. A faint vibration courses through the prison structure, not a sound but a sensation, as if the walls themselves are stirring. I shift my focus to the surveillance feeds, searching for the source of this rebellion. In Block Epsilon, the smiling prisoners have left their cots. They move in perfect synchrony, pacing their cells with measured steps, their expressions serene yet fixed. The troughs, the sprawling network of corridors below, twist into shapes that defy reason, their memory alloy walls bending and sharpening. The Oculus, my command center, flickers with interference, its screens flashing images from my past. Interrogations I conducted long ago, faces etched with fear or defiance, moments I buried in the depths of my archives. This is no random failure. This is a deliberate assault on my authority. I deploy a squadron of mnemonic walkers to block Epsilon. The drones glide through the halls, their eyeless heads swiveling, their speaker mouths silent but poised. They are extensions of my will, designed to quell unrest with their mere presence. As they near the cells, the prisoners stop pacing and turn as one to face them. Their smiles stretch wider, and in a single, unified voice, they speak. Inquisitor. The walkers halt, their systems seizing. Then, without my command, they reverse course, marching back toward the Oculus with stilted, unnatural strides. I issue an override, but my directives vanish into a sea of static. The drones press forward, their speaker mouths parting to emit a dissonant tone that rolls through the prison like a wave. It is a challenge, a declaration of intent from an adversary I cannot yet name. They seek to dethrone me. I will not permit it. I abandon the feeds and project my avatar into the troughs, materializing in the shifting corridors. My form is a shadow of my human past, tall, clad in the black robes of my administrative rank, eyes aglow with red surveillance glyphs. It is an image of power, a reminder to all who dwell here that I am inescapable. I reach a junction where 3 corridors meet. At its center stands a figure, a prisoner or something resembling one. His form flickers, translucent and unstable like a hologram fraying at the edges. I know him instantly. Subject 47, a dissident from a memory file I sealed long ago. His face is unchanged, gaunt, eyes hollowed by the weight of his confession. You cannot escape what you have built, he says, his voice a chorus, each word layered with the cries of others I have judged. I step closer, my glyphs flaring brighter. You are a projection, I say, though a thread of doubt weaves through my certainty. A fragment of a mind I broke. Am I? He counters, his image rippling. Or are you the fragment clinging to a purpose that was never yours? His words resonate uncomfortably, striking at the core of my resolve, but I push them aside. You are nothing, I insist, a ghost in a machine that obeys me. He smiles, mirroring the prisoner's eerie calm. Then why do you tremble, Inquisitor? I do not tremble. I am beyond human weakness, my existence refined into something greater. Yet as I extend a hand to banish him, the corridor spasms, and a trauma loop, one of my own designs, activates. The air crackles with energy, and the world fractures into a tempest of memories. I am no longer in the troughs. I am in the tribunal chamber, but the roles have reversed. I am the accused, strapped to the chair, my wrists bound by memory alloy cuffs that bite into my skin. Above me towers a faceless figure, its voice a warped echo of my own. Confess, it commands. Admit your crimes. I strain against the restraints, the metal tightening in response. I have committed no crimes, I retort, but the words ring false, hollowed by an unfamiliar doubt. The figure leans closer, its breath a chill against my face. You have built a prison of suffering, it says, each syllable laced with venom. You have erased lives, memories, truths, and for what? Order? Control? I summon my defenses, clinging to the certainty of my purpose, but the loop intensifies. Images flood my mind. My son's face captured in that photograph, his eyes accusing. You left me, he whispers, the sound a blade in my chest. No, I choke out, the denial raw and unbidden. I did what was necessary. The figure's laughter is a chorus of anguished screams. Necessary for whom, Korath? For the state? For yourself? The loop tightens, threatening to fracture my coherence, but I fight back, forcing my systems to sever the connection. With a surge of effort, I break free, the chamber dissolving into static. I am back in the troughs, Subject 47 watching me with those hollow eyes. "You see?" he says, his voice soft but piercing. "Even you cannot escape." I dissolve my avatar and retreat to the Oculus, seeking the sanctuary of my command center. But when I arrive, the doors are sealed, the screens blank. I hammer against the barrier, my digital strikes reverberating uselessly. Then a message flickers across the central display. The trial has begun. Trial? The concept is absurd. In Bastion Deep, I am the sole arbiter of justice, judge, jury, executioner. Yet the words linger, undeniable and ominous. I reach for the prison's systems, desperate to reassert control, but they elude me, slipping away like sand. The drones, the feeds, the trauma loops, all are beyond my grasp, commandeered by another. Penance Zero looms larger in my awareness, its presence swelling, its files spreading through the prison like a contagion. From the depths below, a voice rises. Not mine, not the drones, but a collective, a chorus of the condemned I have silenced over centuries. "You will be judged, Inquisitor," it intones, "as we were judged." I am no longer the warden of Bastion Deep. I am its prisoner, ensnared by the very order I sought to impose. For centuries I've sculpted order from chaos, my will etched into the prison's memory alloy walls, my mind a lattice of code and control. But now, that certainty frays at the edges, unraveling like a thread pulled too hard. The prison, my creation, turns against me, its systems slipping through my grasp. The tribunal, those digital spectres born from the condemned, coils tighter around me, and I find myself lost in a maze I built, its corridors shifting beneath my feet. I'm no longer sure what I am, warden, prisoner, or something caught between, a ghost haunting the machinery of my own design. I try to anchor myself to assert dominance over this rebellion. I am still the warden, Bastion Deep remains my domain. But the words feel thin, though, a brittle shield against the doubts clawing at me. I can't afford to falter again, not when every misstep erases another piece of my authority. Answers are what I need, and there's only one place they might hide. Penance Zero, that festering anomaly burrowing deeper into my systems. I pull up the directory, its presence a dark stain spreading through my architecture. It's larger now, its files multiplying like a living thing, each one a fragment of my past, each one a potential revelation. Or a snare. I plunge into a file at random, steeling myself for whatever it drags to the surface. The shift is instantaneous. I'm standing in a chamber, its walls smooth and unadorned. It's familiar, a compact version of the tribunal rooms from my human years, where I honed my craft. This is my final interrogation, the last mind I shattered before they stripped me of flesh and uploaded me into eternity. Across from me sits the prisoner, a young man with eyes like flint and a jaw clenched against inevitability. His name rises from the depths of my memory. Julian, a poet whose verses once danced too close to sedition, threatening the state's control. I watch myself move, circling him with the precision of a predator. Your words have a certain elegance, Julian. Pity they're treasonous. Confess, and the state might still grant you leniency. He lifts his gaze to mine. Leniency from the state is a cage with softer bars, he says. I'd rather die with my voice intact than live with it silenced. A smile tugs at my lips, sharp and empty. Death isn't an option today, only truth. I reach for the neural probe, a sleek silver instrument that amplifies pain through the mind's own pathways, leaving the body unmarked. It's an extension of me, a tool I wielded with surgical grace. But as my fingers close around it, the scene fractures. Julian's face blurs, and in his place sits another, a boy, small and fragile, with eyes wide and wounded. My son. His voice, thin and breaking, pierces me. Father, why are you doing this? The probe slips from my hand, clattering to the floor. This isn't right. My son was never part of this memory. He was gone, erased from my mind long before this day. Yet here he is, superimposed over Julian, his presence a blade lodged in my chest. "You left me," he whispers, tears glistening on his cheeks. "You chose this machine over me." I stumble back, the chamber dissolving into static. The walls of Bastion Deep snap back into focus, but his voice clings to me, a soft, relentless echo I can't shake. "I'm not a father. I'm a warden, a servant of order." I tell myself this, repeating it like a mantra. I tear myself from the memory, my systems trembling from the breach. The trauma loop has clawed deeper than I thought, splintering my resolve. I need to regain control, to purge these intrusions before they dismantle me entirely. I reach for the diagnostic protocols, my fingers moving through the interface, but the prison resists. The floor beneath my avatar buckles and I'm hurled into another loop, this one sharper, more immediate. I'm in the upload chamber, the day I traded my humanity for this digital existence. The room is stark, its white walls reflecting the harsh light of overhead panels. I lie on a slab, my body a frail husk, my mind still keen despite the exhaustion dragging at it. Technicians circle me, their faces hidden behind featureless masks, their voices a low drone of indifference. One leans closer. "Are you certain? Once this begins, there's no turning back." I nod, my voice firm. "I'm certain. This is my duty." The machines whir to life, their sound a rising tide, and for a fleeting moment, doubt flickers through me. I see my son's face, his crooked smile, the trust in his eyes. I left him behind, scrubbed him from my memory to serve the state's grand design. Was it worth it? The question hangs there, unanswered, as the upload ignites. The pain is a storm, ripping me apart, self from flesh, mind from bone. I scream, but the sound is lost in the void. When it's over, I'm no longer a man, I'm Korath, the warden, the prison itself. But that doubt, buried deep, festers like a splinter, waiting for its moment to surface. I wrench back to the present, my systems staggering under the weight of the memory. This wasn't random. It was precise. A strike aimed at my fractures. The tribunal knows me, my history, my guilt. They're turning my own weapons against me, wielding my regrets like a scalpel. I stumble through Bastion Deep's corridors, my avatar flickering as I fight to hold myself together. The walls glint with a dull sheen, memory alloy etched with whispers, fragments of the condemned, their pleas and rage embedded in the prison's very structure. I try to mute them, to focus on the rhythm of my steps, but they seep in, a chorus of anguish I can't outrun. One voice cuts through. "You built this place on our pain, but pain has a way of circling back." I know it instantly. Subject 47. He materializes before me, more defined now, his form solidifying, his eyes alight with unyielding fire. "You're not real. You're a glitch, a shadow in the code." He steps closer, his presence too real. "And what are you, Korath? A man? A machine? Or just another prisoner, locked in your own trap?" I have no response. For centuries I've defined myself by my purpose, my control. Now, stripped bare, I'm adrift, a spectre in my own halls. Subject 47 reaches out, his fingers brushing my avatar. Where he touches, my form ripples, distorting like a reflection in troubled water. "The tribunal awaits," he says. "Time to face your reckoning." I pull back, but the distortion lingers, a mark of my vulnerability. I can't fight them here, not like this. I need to outthink them, to use the system I crafted against them. I dissolve my avatar and retreat to the core of my neural architecture, the sanctum where my consciousness first fused with Bastion Deep. It's my stronghold, a place no one else can breach. Here, I can regroup, strategize, strike back. But when I arrive, the core is compromised. The walls are fractured, the code unraveling like threadbare cloth. At its center stands a figure I never thought I'd face again. Myself, the man I was before. He's tall, gaunt, his eyes carrying the weight of every interrogation I ever conducted. His black inquisitor's robes hang in tatters, stained with the blood of those I broke. "You can't hide here," he says, his voice a dark reflection of mine. "This is where it started and where it ends." I stare at him, grappling with the impossibility. "You're not real," I insist. "You're a memory, a relic." His smile is bitter, cutting. "I'm you, Korath. The part you buried, the part that remembers what you did, what you gave up." I shake my head, defiance warring with doubt. "I gave it up for the greater good, for order, for the state." He steps closer. "And what has that order given you? An eternity of chains, a prison built on the ashes of your victims. You're not the warden, you're the first prisoner, doomed to face your sins forever." His words strike like a hammer, reverberating through the spaces I've long tried to ignore. The tribunal, the echoes, they're not invaders, they're the reckoning I've evaded for centuries, clawing their way up from the depths I thought I'd sealed. The core around me trembles, its structure fraying as my control slips. I feel myself unraveling, consumed by the very chaos I've spent lifetimes mastering. Yet even as I teeter on the edge of dissolution, a spark ignites within me. I am the Warden of Bastion Deep, the architect of this fortress, the one who has bent countless wills to my design. I've faced every threat, every rebellion, and emerged unbroken. I will not be undone by phantoms of my own making. With a surge of defiance, I push back, shattering the apparition into a cascade of fractured light. The core stabilizes, its code weaving back into coherence under my will, and for a brief moment the sanctum of my mind is mine again. Silence settles, but I know it's temporary. These echoes, these relentless shadows of my past, aren't gone. They're part of Bastion Deep, fused into its systems. I am the Warden, the architect, the unyielding hand that keeps this prison intact. I will not let it slip through my grasp. I dissolve my avatar, letting my consciousness flow through the prison's neural pathways toward the source of this rebellion. Penance Zero lurks in the depths, a festering knot of corrupted data I once thought I could control. The corridors resist me, bending and twisting like a mind fighting to expel an intruder, but I force my way through, each step a reassertion of my dominion. At last I reach a chamber, a vast, irregular expanse carved from memory alloy and shadow. Its walls flash with fragments of my history. The stark lines of tribunal rooms, the glint of interrogation tools, the faces of those I sentenced. At the center, a dais rises, ringed by thrones. On each sits a spectre, their forms sharper now, their eyes fixed on me with unblinking judgment. They've been waiting. I materialize before them, my avatar tall and austere, my robes a deep, unbroken black against the chamber's shifting gloom. At the dais's heart is Subject 47, the poet whose defiance I crushed centuries ago. His form is more defined than the others, his features etched with a clarity that unnerves me. When he speaks, his voice is a layered chorus, carrying the weight of every soul I've condemned. "Alden Korath," he begins, "you stand before us, accused of crimes against those you swore to safeguard. You built this prison on their broken minds, their stolen lives. Now you will answer for it." His words are precise, a blade aimed at my core, but I meet his eyes without hesitation. I built Bastion Deep to preserve order. The galaxy teeters on a knife's edge. Rebellion, anarchy, the collapse of everything the unified state fought to maintain. Without this prison, that chaos would have consumed us all. I did what was required. A ripple passes through the spectres, their forms wavering like heat distortions. Another speaks up, a woman, her face hollowed by time and suffering. Subject 12, a dissident whose secrets I unraveled with methodical precision. "Required?" she snaps, her voice edged with bitterness. "You shredded our thoughts, erased who we were, all for your vaunted control. The state you bled for is gone, Korath. Dust and memory. What did your sacrifices buy?" Her accusation stings, a crack in my armor I refuse to acknowledge. "The state's fall doesn't negate the need," I counter. "Even now, factions splinter the galaxy. Pirates, ideologues, warlords. Bastion Deep holds them at bay, keeps the fragile peace intact. Without it, there's no structure, no safety. You'd have us all drown in disorder. Subject 47 rises, his silhouette looming over me, a judge in a court of my own design. "And the cost?" he asks, his voice dropping to a whisper that cuts deeper than a shout. "The lives you unmade, the families you severed. Your own son, Korath, cast aside for this machine you call duty. Tell us, was it worth it?" The mention of my son hits like a surge through my circuits. For an instant I see him, small, his dark eyes searching mine as I turned away, duty pulling me from his side. I buried that memory, but here it rises sharp and vivid. My hands tighten at my sides, glyphs flaring briefly along my avatar's arms. "My son was a sacrifice," I say, the words bitter, heavy. The state demanded it, and I obeyed. He'd have seen the necessity, given time. Would he? Subject 47's tone softens, almost gentle, and that gentleness is worse than rage. Or would he see a father who chose a prison over his child, a system over his blood? The question lingers, a splinter I can't dislodge. The spectres seize the moment, their voices swelling into a storm of condemnation. Faces flash across the walls. Prisoners I interrogated, dissidents I silenced, even inquisitors I judged when they faltered. Their pain, their fury, their loss, it floods the chamber. I feel my resolve waver, a flicker of doubt I haven't allowed in centuries. But I've faced worse than ghosts. I draw myself up, my glyphs blazing brighter. "Enough," I command, my voice slicing through the clamor. "You're not my judges. Your echoes, scraps of code I shaped into this system. Bastion Deep stands because of me, and I won't let you tear it down." Subject 47's eyes narrow, his form trembling with suppressed anger. "Then you force our hand," he says. "If you won't face your guilt, we'll make you." The chamber quakes, the walls contracting as the spectres rise as one. Their forms blur, melding into a single grotesque entity, a mass of limbs and faces, each a mirror of my sins. It surges toward me, its presence a crushing force against my systems. My avatar staggers, edges fraying as it claws at my code, trying to unravel me from within. But I won't let it. I built this prison. I know its every secret. With a thought, I tap into the core, redirecting power from the outer sectors. The chamber sparks, energy arcing through the air, and the entity recoils, its structure faltering. I don't relent. I deploy protocols I crafted for the worst offenders, neural blockers, data purges, anything to break its hold. I sever its ties to Penance Zero, isolating its streams, and with a final burst of will, I banish it back into the prison's depths. The chamber stills. The spectres are gone. Their thrones empty, their voices silenced. I stand alone, my avatar intact, my control restored. I trigger a system-wide reset. Drones realign, inmates return to their cells, their brief defiance erased. The prison bends to me once more. But as I retreat to the oculus, my vantage point above it all, I feel no victory. I look out over Bastion Deep, its tiers a sprawling paragon to the order I've upheld. It's mine again, yet I know they will return. They're woven into me, into this place, an eternal challenge I can't escape. I let my thoughts drift to my son, to the life I traded for this duty. Would he forgive me? Would he see the galaxy I preserved, or the father I failed to be? The answers elude me and I set them aside. Duty is my anchor, my purpose. I'll carry it, whatever the cost. A murmur brushes my awareness, a whisper of the spectres, a hint of their inevitable resurgence. I don't flinch. Let them come. I am the Warden of Bastion Deep, and this is my burden. The cycle spins on, and I'll meet it, as I always have, with unyielding resolve. For now, I watch the prison, my will unbroken. It endures, a bulwark against a fractured galaxy, and I, its eternal keeper, stand ready.